Hello and welcome to our next video. In this lesson we're going to cover buttons and how they are styled up in the Bootstrap system and how we can leverage that in our code. So go ahead and get buttons.html and you can take a look with me as we go through this code, and you can play around with it, change some of the styles on your own to see how you could easily also incorporate this into your code or your themes with the colors and styles that you would like. So here I've added just a couple things at the front in our style here that we could use in order to override some default buttons. So we have a button class called myButtonClass1, which has a black background, a color of white. We have an active toggle on it to override when the button's actually in the active state. We have a hover, we have a focus. If we wanted, we could do a disabled state as well. There are more things we could override here, but these are the ones that definitely need to override right out of the box in order to avoid some unexpected or unwanted behavior, such as our text going away because they're both colored black or something like that. So those are just some styles. We'll use those. But let's talk about buttons. Here in our code, we have a couple different things to talk about. First of all, the regular old button, which you can see here is just a type equals button, class equals button, and we just put the text a button in there. But if you're still working with server-side programming, which is very common, especially in the business world, you might be needing to do inputs which post back to the form. So that way you can actually send the post request across the wire by using a submit button. But I wanted to point out you can very easily override the class styles on the submit button just as well and use the button styles that are available in Bootstrap without any worries. The other thing to note is that when we use a submit button, we could actually just include the text we want on the button in the value attribute rather than have to have a separate text like we do with the button. So the button will have to put the actual text we want inside of the button tags, but we can't actually use a value tag in the button. That's the big difference there. And the other thing about just using a button tag, this button tag here, is that when we're working with JavaScript or jQuery, for single page applications or just for some of the Web 2.0 stuff where we're actually just doing a lot of stuff via API calls, maybe with some backbone or something else, we don't necessarily need to post back to the server. Well, the button tag won't actually submit the form. So we can have these inside our form, use a button, and it won't actually cause the page to refresh or post back or send that post request. We'll actually have to do it through some jQuery or some AJAX of some sort. So that's good to know, especially as you get more advanced in your programming. And again, the button type will look the same, and we can style it just like we style any of the input submits or any other tags that could take these button styles. But here again, we have to put the text inside the default button. So if we look at this page at the very top, you'll see here we have all three of them in buttons, and they're all available to be pressed. When they're focused, they have a different border, just like our input lines. They're not doing anything right now. Nothing's wired up. Nothing's inside a form. And so don't expect them to do anything, but I just wanted to show those three and just to point out that all three of those are basically generating identical layouts. Nothing looks different about either one, whether it's the submit button or the regular button. So just to know you can do that. In this next one, we can use our contextual colors just like we've used before. So if you're familiar with primary, success, info, warning, and danger, of course we can use those on buttons, which is really nice that all of these are named the same. So we can remember that very easily, and now you'll see that all of the buttons will be styled in their specific colors based on that keyword, primary, success, info, warning, or danger. So the next thing to look at then is going to be that we can actually use links, and we can make links look like buttons, which is really nice, especially if you're working with a lot of posting or sending requests to different links. Here I've just linked everything to Google, but you can see that we have a button link class, which will make the class actually render. So here if we see the button link, you can see it actually takes the button off of it, so it looks like one of our regular old links if you like that style. And then we have the rest of them where we've basically dressed them up with our contextual colors or just the regular old default button. But those are all just href tags, which we've linked to Google. So you could easily click it and go to Google, which is really spectacular, right? All right, so moving forward, the other thing I want to show you, a couple things here. You can actually resize the button using some classes. Here we have a button large, a button small, a button extra small. There's no button dash medium. And there's two other states that we can use, disabled and active. Now, disabled will actually gray out the button in a way that you can't actually do anything. And active just kind of brings the focus onto it, changes it a little bit, makes it darker if you're using some of the default styles, or depending on how you style it yourself. Now these are going to be more common if you're writing queries, if you're writing jQuery or JavaScript and you're actually programmatically changing these. You would add the class disabled or remove the class disabled if you wanted to make a login button available once you've validated something for whatever reason. You might take a disabled class off. Or if you wanted to show a button press, maybe like an animation where you have it hit 3 or 4 times, you might just recall that active state, just remove it, add it, remove it, add it, remove it over 3 or 4 times over some timed event for whatever reason to make it look like it's flashing or something. There's probably better ways to do that though, but that's just the first sample that came to my head. So if you look at those, you can see here you have the larger button, you have the medium or small button, and then you have the extra small button. And then here's our disabled button. You can't actually do anything. And here's our active state. You can see, you can't really tell here, but when you hover over it, it doesn't do anything. You can maybe see that on your own. And you can't change the darkness of it by pressing it at all. It doesn't flash. It just kind of sits in that active state the whole time. So finally, our styled button that we created, I just wanted to show we can create our default button with our overridden class, which again is going to be very important as you change your themes. If you want your buttons to match your theme, you can easily style it up so that it has the right colors. And then, of course, we'll have an active and disabled on there as well. The hover and focus are going to happen based on just using the page. So the default style is going to be black with white text. When we hover over it, it turns yellow. When we make it focus, it'll have that light blue color so that you can see that it's actually in focus. And the active button, we can actually get in focus even though it's disabled, or this is the active button. The disabled button, we can't get in focus. So you can see that no matter how much I click on this, we can't. But you can see I totally changed the way that these render based on whether or not they're active, disabled. The disabled button is completely a different color than the regular button, so it's a little bit more pronounced. Here this is actually a different color too. It's just lighter, so you can see that same sort of pattern going on. But basically that wraps up our look at using buttons, the prepackaged styles that are in place with Bootstrap, which again match our contextual colors, especially important if you want to follow a theme where you have all your CSS things green for whatever reason. You could easily do that. And also we've shown here how it's very simple to use these same styles to style up links, post to forms if you want to use a submit button, or just rely on jQuery or Ajax with a button, and finally to override with our own styles. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.